To be honest, I do not believe in this supernatural stuff. However, in my opinion, there are still some things in nature in the real world that happens that is even difficult for me to explain. I live in Brazil, in a big city called Salvador, and when I was 25 years old and my sister, at the time, was 35 years old, traveled down by bus to a city in southern Brazil called Foz do Iguaçu. The thing is, in the deep night, I was sleeping and then I woke up, and because the bus driver and passenger was talking too loud in the bus cabin. The weather was nice and the night was beautiful, with shining stars in the sky. Suddenly, the bus driver and his passenger that was talking to him in the cabin screamed very loud, and I heard very clearly them saying, "Oh my God, what the heck is that?" And people started to look outside the bus to see what the hell was going on. Me, my sister, and the passengers on my side saw a naked, red-haired young woman walking on the roadside. We were able to see her with such clarity that even if it was a very dark night, it looked like someone had thrown bright lights all over her, like those that they would use in the theater. I remember her face. I even remember the color of her eyes, green and gray at the same time. She showed dark circles under her eyes, like she was very sleepy and tired because she was completely naked. I could see her intimacy, if you know what I'm saying here. It was red hair, with some bloody drops like she was menstruating. Everybody thought that she had been raped and luckily escaped from her aggressor. However, here's the strange thing. First, you guys can test it if you want. When someone is driving and you see a person or an animal or an object far from the car in movement one is looking at, it takes a few seconds or even minutes to disappear from the view because it is far. We still respect the laws of physics, right? But if one is driving and you see a person or an animal or whatever it is passing by close to the car in movement, it only takes a few seconds to disappear from one's views. It is very fast. The bus was moving fast, close to the roadside, and the red-haired woman's image should pass in front of our eyeballs in seconds. Well, everybody took more than 2 or 3 minutes watching her, while she walked calmly to no place, only ahead. Second, as I said, it was deep in the night, with no lampposts out there. We were in the middle of nowhere, in a long dirt road. But she was shining, like some strong light was coming straight out of her. Everybody, and I mean everybody in this bus saw her. I, my sister, and the passengers on my side, and the other passengers on their side, plus the driver and the passenger that was with him in the cabin. That means her image was being seen by everyone in the bus. Everybody got scared and brought up their theories about the lady, that she was lost and she had been raped or she was a ghost, etc. Many years later, I was researching about urban legends to write a comic book strip. I even wasn't thinking about this fact of my life at that very moment. I got surprised by a specific urban legend about a woman who walks on the roadside and that she is some kind of ghost. My attention was grabbed strongly by this urban legend because I saw that many cultures know about her. Brazil, the USA, Japan, Russia, Canada, and so many other countries have similar encounters with just people on the side of the road like this. This feeling has been around for 2 to 3 years. I have always felt that I was being watched, and I never felt safe in my own home. At first, I brushed it off because I have severe anxiety, and I thought that my brain was playing tricks on me. But after about a month of feeling this, something appeared. I started noticing that small items in my home began showing up in different places. I brushed this off too, because I'm very forgetful and I misplace things a lot. It's pretty common for me. But about a week ago, I was taking a shower, so I placed my bracelet on the counter. Now, this bracelet was given to me by my father, and it was one of those things I had never misplaced. But when I got out of the shower, it was gone. I thought that maybe it had fallen sometime during my shower, but even after I looked around the entire bathroom, I still couldn't find it. I looked around for about an hour before giving up and heading upstairs to get a glass of water, only to find that my bracelet was sitting neatly next to the faucet. I was freaked out, but I didn't really think about it. The thing that's worrying me the most is that 2 days ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling like my organs were spilling out of my body. I panicked and checked my stomach area, but nothing was different. I called my friend Andy, who works as an ER doctor, and asked him to come over and give me a checkup. He arrived quickly and checked me about 3 times before telling me that nothing was wrong. But tonight, the feeling was back, and it feels like a very distinct hand is tugging on my insides. I'm really scared, and now I've been hearing knocks and footsteps despite me living alone. Does anyone know if this is a spirit or perhaps a demon? And should I be worried? My best friend in school had bought a book about angels, thinking that it was about how beautiful they were, etc. But it was a little more creepy than that, as religion usually is. The name of the book is The Angelorum by Mijin Gonzalez Whippler. You can find it on Amazon if you want to. We usually went around school with it, telling some teachers that happened to have an angel name what it meant. One day, I borrowed it from her to read at home. I was doing it in my room when my sister noticed it and asked me if we could read it together. We got to a section of the book where there are names of all the angels, and then all the fallen angels. In that last part, there's a warning that says not to read those names out loud, because that summons the friends. Anyways, my sister, being how she is, read some of them out loud, acting all tough. We were like 12 years old at the time. Nothing happened during the rest of the evening, but something did during the night. Early in the morning, I spoke with my sister, and she had so much bruises all over her arms with really detailed marks of teeth. It was ridiculous. I can't remember how many, but it was like someone broke their jaw, and with both sections of the mouth sank their teeth into her skin and then twisted. She didn't recall any important details from that night, and we didn't know what to make of it. We spoke to our parents, and they reacted the most scary movie cliché way possible and did nothing. After that, in the matter of a day, the bruises disappeared, and nothing out of the ordinary happened after. Last year, I spoke with my sister, and she says she remembers the book but doesn't remember anything about the bruises, not even speaking with our parents. This happened to me 2 years ago at my house, in the early morning hours, around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, if I can't remember correctly. I was doing some chores around the house, and the last thing to do was to mop my bathroom floor. It took me about 10 or 15 minutes. When I was done, I took the mop and mop bucket outside to let the mop dry and dump the bucket. I dumped the bucket over the backyard fence. Now, before I continue with the story, I want to clarify some details. I have a cow pasture. This facing the east side of my house. To the south is my neighbor's house, and the east side of my house has the back door, where the west has the front door, which at this time the doorknob to the back door would jam and not lock, so I had to wiggle it to lock it up before going to bed. Now, as I'm walking back to the back door, I go up the stairs to the door, and I saw something in my peripheral vision. I look over at my neighbor's front yard to see something leaned over their porch, like a little kid who is trying to see something in the water at the edge of the dock. It snaps itself up to a crouching position and looks at me. Now, for what I thought at first was my neighbor was looking for his cat or something, but his hair was way longer than his, like it had hair that hung a foot over the porch deck. My neighbor's hair only went to his shoulders. Another thing that struck it strange was it had white glowing eyes, and the rest of his body that I could make out was jet black. I was stuck there, frozen in fear. As it looked as if the eyes were growing, I shaped out of it and went inside, wondering what I saw. And I went on, as I did before, but more alert, when I was outside at night. 2 weeks passed by, and I pushed it out of my mind as it could have been my neighbor, and I was just imagining the creepy parts of it. But around the same time in the morning, when I last saw it, when I was walking my dog, and nothing out of the ordinary happened until I went around to the front of my house. As I got closer to the front porch, I saw a head bobbing up and down, looking at my kitchen window. I thought it was a cat, until I got near the screen door. I heard my trash can knock over, and I saw a black humanoid figure jump off the porch towards the south, then dart east towards the cow pasture. My dog pulled me towards it, as I saw it jump 6 feet in the air above the barbed wire fence. What really freaked me out about this was, after it jumped the fence, it stopped and looked at me. It stood what I think was around 5 to 6 feet tall, and it had those same white glowing eyes and long hair that was down to his knees. It didn't have hair anywhere else but the hair from his head. After a couple seconds, I take my dog in through the front door. When my mom asked me what was on the porch, I told her it was a cat. I haven't seen it again, and I thank God for it. I don't ever want to see something like that again. I know that I don't live far from the Seminole Reservation, but I'm not sure if they have anything like skinwalkers or something like that. This story takes place a couple of summers ago here in good old Virginia. My friend, we will call him Jimmy, wanted to go ghost hunting at a local cemetery. Now, I'm not a huge fan of ghosts or anything of that matter, but it sounded like fun, and definitely was going to make the night far more interesting than sitting playing video games all night. The local cemetery had its own legends. The cemetery is absolutely huge. I won't give the location, but any local person will know the place. It was about 12 a.m., maybe even 1, and we parked down the street at a local park. We walked through the woods, and we really didn't want the local police department catching us. It was nice. It wasn't too hot and it wasn't too cold. It was perfect for walking the gravestones. I also would like to state that we're not there to disrespect anyone or family members. We always walk in there asking for the local ghosts if we can be there. We traveled up and down rows of graves, checking each one, asking things like, "Are you here? Can you touch one of us?" We had our phone's recorder going, trying to catch some voices if we could. I don't scare easily, but I was nervous getting touched by someone or something that I cannot see. We were there maybe 2 hours. We sat up against a tree to take a break, talking amongst ourselves when Jimmy hit my arm and said, "What the hell's that?" I looked up, and 20 or so feet in front of us was a guy in a suit. It looked torn up. It was dirty, and what I could make out of his face, it was pale white and very skeletal looking. He was definitely walking like you would see a zombie one night of the living dead or something. I swear at first we thought someone was playing a joke on us, with a very well put together costume. It wasn't making the sound of a zombie or anything, more like if someone just ran a mile, like it was out of breath. It looked like it was struggling to walk. At no point did it turn around and look at us, just kept walking. We followed it with our eyes, trying not to make any sound. We watched this thing make its way down the row of graves, and then it walks behind a giant pile of what looked like a newly dug grave. We waited for about 15 minutes waiting for this thing to appear on the other side, but it never did. We walked down the row of graves and slowly made our way around the pile of dirt. Nothing. There was nothing there, just an empty grave. If this was a prank, this person would have been hiding in the dirt or invisible, because our eyes never left that pile of dirt. We stood there for what felt like hours trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. But we didn't, and we left that night completely freaked out. I will never go back there again. I grew up near a bird and wildlife sanctuary in southwest Ohio. It was always me and my friend's favorite spot growing up, because when the fish weren't biting, there was always plenty of things to explore. This particular time, I had made plans with a friend to hike in about a mile and do some night fishing. About an hour before we were set to meet up, he calls me and tells me he won't be able to go this time due to something coming up last minute. I considered canceling, but the weather was too nice and I figured after a long week, it'd be nice to get out there and clear my head in the fresh air. I headed out about 2 hours before nightfall and hiked in a mile or so and got to my favorite spot where a small creek joins up with the main canal. It's a secluded spot, and you rarely cross paths with anyone this far into the area. I always plan on camping when I go at night because the terrain is kinda swampy and can be difficult to navigate by flashlight. All was going well, and I'd enjoyed a couple of beers by the time nightfall came. About 1 a.m., I began to get an uneasy feeling, but just chalked it up to me being alone and having a little beer buzz going on. When I night fish, certain places I don't always start a fire, because I don't like to draw the attention to myself if I'm out alone. By 2 a.m., I was getting kind of freaked out, because I noticed there was an unusual silence when there should have been a ton of nocturnal wildlife sounds. I sat down and cracked another beer and thought I heard something moving a little ways behind me, in the back of the woodline. I flashed my flashlight back in the direction but saw nothing. A few minutes later, I heard something in the creek moving around. My first thought that it was a raccoon, but my instinct told me that it wasn't. I once again shone my light in that direction, and this time I know I saw something, and it wasn't an animal. I hollered out, "Hey, what's up?" but got no response. The thought popped into my head that my buddy had been able to come and was trying to freak me out. So I tossed a couple small rocks in that direction and said, "Okay man, give it up, I know it's you." Still, no response. I grabbed my light and began walking back into the woods, and what I saw scared the shit out of me. About 50 feet into the woods, my light fell upon a kid about 10 or 12 years old standing next to the creek. My heart was racing at this point, and I just stared at him and he stared back blankly at me. I asked him what he was doing out here, and where was his dad. He just continues to stare. I asked him if he needed help, and told him I have a phone if he needs to call someone. He still didn't speak. I told him if he's lost, I'd be glad to help him out. At that point, he darts off into the woods. No light, no nothing. I began to try to follow him, but I couldn't see with my light. However, I could hear his footsteps. After a short distance, I said, "Screw this, something weird is going on." I ran back to my gear, packed up, and began walking out. Halfway out, I came across a scrubby-looking guy who calmly asked if I caught anything. Before I could respond, he asked if I happened to pass a kid on my way out, to which I replied, "What is going on?" He started laughing and began walking deeper in, like he was on some summer hike and nothing messed up was going on. Once at my truck, I called the police and told them my story. They came out about 10 minutes later and got my info and went into the woods. They never contacted me and I never saw anything on the news, so I assume they never found anything. Still, to this day, it freaks me out when I think of this. What I always go back to is why did the kid not respond when I offered to help him, and why was the man so calm and relaxed? About 2 years ago, we moved into a new house. After meeting the neighbors, we learned about the abandoned house next door to ours. But it wasn't just next door. Only our driveway separated our house and this one. Me being super curious and always looking for adventure, decided to go explore. I started by peeking into the windows, cupping my hands and pressing my face against the glass. The whole outside of the house was falling apart. The roof was covered in dead vines and rotting leaves. The inside wasn't much different. But one room had a pile of wicker baskets and decorative bowls stacked on top of a large table. The kitchen had a shopping bag on the counter, dishes, and hand soap. Keep in mind, this is only what I could see from looking through the windows. There were 3 doors on that side of the house, and I tried them all. The first 2 were locked, and the third was unlocked, though. The third door led into the garage or led into the laundry room and kitchen. I didn't dare explore it yet. I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. A few days later, after having told my dad about it, he agreed to go inside with me. We looked around a bit, but he was nervous too, and didn't want to stay long. I knew either my mom nor my little brother would go with me, so I went back, alone. The inside of that house was even creepier than the decaying outside. Some rooms were filled with furniture, stacked up on top of each other. One of the bedrooms had a mattress leaned against the wall, with a small dresser near the door, with a tray of jewelry. The fridge was empty besides a pack of unopened V8 cans. The living room was crowded with boxes and books. There were still pictures on the walls, and on a small side table, there was a picture of an older couple. There were even keys on the hooks by the front door. It looked as if the owners had just begun to pack, but just disappeared. We looked up the address and figured out that the owners also owned a few other properties. Maybe they were just using this house as a storage one. But that still doesn't explain the keys, jewelry, and hand soap. It wasn't as if someone was using these things either. Everything was covered with a thick layer of dust and spider webs. As I passed through the kitchen to leave, I heard a creaking above me. I froze, holding my breath. The house is 1 story. The only thing above me was the attic. I strained my ears, trying to confirm what I had just heard. There it was again, creaking, and the sound of footsteps, too loud to be an animal. Someone was in the attic. My eyes shifted to the pull-down cord a few feet away from me, the way into the attic. You bet your ass I bolted out of there, barely remembering to shut the door behind me. I haven't been back since, and I don't know what would have happened if I stayed. It was Thanksgiving of 1963 in Orchards, Washington. Our family had gathered at Grandma and Grandpa's house, a fairly large gathering. My 2 cousins, Kathy and Shelley, and I were pretty much the same age. Kathy and I were about 15 and Shelley was 13. We decided to go into a back bedroom where Grandma kept all of the board games and play something while the turkey dinner was cooking and the guys were watching football. Grandma had a lot of games, but one in particular she told us many times to never play with was the Ouija board. She was very stern in her warnings. We went through the stack of games, and finally Kathy said, "Let's play with the Ouija board." It was a forbidden fruit. So, we set up a cardboard card table and set out to play. None of us believed in it, and we really were just doing it for a giggle. We'd been told or read never to ask about death. At first, it didn't matter what we asked it. Nothing happened. But finally, it started to answer. We had many dumb questions and giggled a lot. When we decided it was about time to put it away, Kathy decided on one last question. Will we all be together next Thanksgiving? It seemed simple enough, but the wooden pointer we all had our fingers on slowly went to the answer. No. No, Kathy said. That was the last, so we didn't ask any more. There was no clarification ever on that. We put the Ouija board away. Skip ahead to the spring of 1964. It was a beautiful day, and we get a call. We needed to come to Providence Hospital in Portland. There has been an accident. Kathy has been injured playing softball at David Douglas High School. A freak accident. She and a boy had both been fielders in softball game. A pop-up fly ball, they both went to it and collided, head first. Kathy started to feel nauseous almost immediately, and she was rushed to the hospital. We got to the hospital. My uncle was sitting with Shelley and my Aunt Zeddy outside of Kathy's room. They had shaved her all long blonde hair off, and she had 2 black eyes, and they were about to wheel her out to have brain surgery. She had cracked her skull from ear to ear, and there was a lot of swelling, and she was unconscious. We waited for her to come back to our room, and hours passed. The hospital became very quiet, and finally she was brought back, head all bandaged and unconscious. They hooked her up to several machines, and she just laid there, with the sound of machines helping her breathe. I would take change and go to play with a payphone and call people and tell them the progress. I would sit with my uncle who couldn't stop crying. One time he asked, "Why did it have to be Kathy? She has a future. Why not Shelley?" I couldn't answer that, and I doubt he would trade either of them to be in that spot. When it was Shelley and my turn to sit, we didn't speak of Thanksgiving. We didn't really speak of anything at all. But it crossed my mind. After about 5 days, Kathy died. She never woke up. I still remember the sound of machines when they turned them off and the finality of it. No more sounds except for crying. There was a huge funeral, and most of the students from David Douglas High School came, and all the family came. One of the pallbearers was the boy who collided with her. I can only imagine how he felt, how he still must feel. Why wasn't it me? Of course, time passed, and the family drifted apart, and it was never a Thanksgiving dinner at Grandma's or Grandpa's again. Kathy's family was shattered, and Grandpa died soon after. Grandma sold the home, moved into her own town, and our families didn't have much reunions, picnics, or dinner ever again. A while ago, I went to a place in Pennsylvania called Hillview Manor. It is a place that made me more of a believer in the paranormal. I had many interesting experiences while there. We used several ways to detect paranormal activity. One, we had a mag light that we twisted the top so it was actually off. If there was a spirit present, it would be able to blink it on. This happened multiple times. It wouldn't turn on incidentally, even when touched. Second, we utilized a device called a spirit box. It would scan radio signals and we could ask questions to which it would flash to a station for an answer. We asked things like, "What is your name?" to one spirit and it answered immediately. We also asked things like what they enjoyed in life. One replied with what they enjoyed eating. There was another experience where, on the tour section, we were told about a rape that happened at our specific part of the psychiatric hospital. While sitting in this area, one of my group of 5 began to feel very anxious. I myself became nauseous and almost threw up. We didn't stay in that section very long. Lastly, we stayed in another section, and I kept seeing disembodied shadow figures, just like out of the corner of my eyes, maybe about 4 times, I don't know. Because all of these experiences, I have become more of a firm believer in the paranormal. Just folded up into this predator's posture, waiting for prey. Then there were its eyes, solid black and sunken. I still want to vomit thinking about his eyes looking at me. And I realized, it's gonna look at me, and there is no avoiding it. Panic, terror unique to this alien thing swallowed me instantly, feeling like I was tilting off the world I had always known, and into an abyss where monsters like this exist. I couldn't breathe. I had to get my window up, or I am ripped by those teeth and torn with those claws. Blood would adorn the cabin of my car, and I would become an unsolved mystery. I had a manual crank window, fuck me. I had a crank window, because I was scared of crashing into the water and not being able to get out of my car. But now I realized there were far worse things in the world than crashing into the water. Its head was turning towards me, and I had to let off the gas, but I was still getting closer to it. It made me want to scream, but I had to get my window up first, and I was cranking it as hard as I could. I was starting to cry as I finally got the window closed. Then I put my gas pedal to the floor. Gravel road be damned. I thought, I must not look at it as I pass. I must not look at it or make direct eye contact. I just shouldn't. It's not good to connect with these things. I've already seen too much. My tires had found grip, and I started to launch forward, passing it. In my peripheral vision, I could see it, starting to unfold its limbs, and it sent a terrible chill down my spine. I'm screwed. And Rose screwed fuck. I was mumbling through my tears as I slid around the turn, fishtailing for a moment before I rocketed down the road. I felt sick. My heart was hammering. I had snot and tears rolling down my face, and my hands were shaking. I glanced in my rearview mirror and could only see darkness. There were no street lamps out there. I used the trick I mentioned in one of my other stories. You tap my brakes soft enough, the light comes on, but I don't actually slow down. Red lit up the dust that was billowing in my wake, but amidst us rolling chaos, I thought I saw a darker shadow than the rest. A tall, thin shadow. I had enough, and decided I was not going to drive straight to the lighted roads and not let off the gas again the rest of the way. No more looking back. I was going to drive 109 miles per hour, which is as fast as I can go, before my governor kicks in. I even ran a stop sign at the end of the road, because I was not going to get caught by this thing if I could help it. I took a right on the highway and flew home. I might have even been relieved to get pulled over, but I did not. When I got home, no one was awake. I was pretty trusted to come home on time, so I called my boyfriend and cried to him for a long time before I was able to explain. He was dismissive and thought I was pulling a joke on him. Then he thought I was just being crazy and seeing things. There are many reasons we didn't stay together, but his insensitivity contributed. Week 3, I refused to take my shortcut anymore. For that reason, I would have to leave my boyfriend's house a bit early, and he'd been making fun of me about it all week. One of the days we went to a park to walk around, and on the way back, he decided he wanted to drive by the house where I saw that thing. I was hysterical, begging him not to drive there, but he would not be dissuaded. So as we got closer, and I could not stop him, I pushed my passenger side seat all the way back and pulled myself down, cowering in a panic of getting near the place. I hid below the window and covered my eyes while panting heavily, reliving the traumatic night in my mind again. At one point, he stopped the car. "Spooky, ye have to see this," he said. "No," I whined, resisting him, pulling at my arm. "No, you really have to see this, look," he said in a changed tone of astonishment. Tears in my eyes, I uncurled and slowly peeked over the rim of the window. The house was gone, burnt clear down to the foundation, with only a handful of framing beams still standing. The ground around the house was blackened in a perfect large circle. My boyfriend started to get out of the car. I shouted, "No, let's get out of here," while I grabbed his arm, but he easily avoided me and got out. He walked around the ashy piles of the ruins for a bit, using a stick to poke at this and that. When he finally came back, he had an intense look of thinking on his face. There was no evidence of any personal belongings, furniture, power wiring, or even interior walls. It doesn't seem like other burned out houses. Something's weird. Then we got to his house. He searched for news articles about any house fires in the area. There weren't any. He called the closest fire station and was quickly brushed off by the person that answered, as they didn't know about a fire there and didn't have time to find out before quickly hanging up on them. I never wanted to see that place again. I went out of my way to avoid the roads in that area. Talking about it still makes my chest tighten, my skin crawl, and my eyes water. My brain still has trouble because I know I saw it. A thing that is nothing like any creature known to humans. This happened just before my senior year of high school, over a period of 3 weeks in the summer. I was 17 years old, drug-free and sober. At the most, I took Advil for headaches every now and then. I just want to assure you, I was not on any mind-altering substances or long-term medication that could affect my cognitive ability. During the summer, my curfew was 11 p.m. This occurred while driving home from my, at that time, boyfriend's house, which took roughly 15 minutes. So let's say about 10:45 at night. I was full of energy at this age, in a night owl, so I was not even remotely tired. In fact, I was hyped up with the warm summer nighttime breeze, car windows down, singing along to the radio. I took a shortcut through back roads to avoid going into the tiny city with its jerk cops. Also, one of the roads I took was super straight and flat, so I could really speed, and it feels great when you're a teenager. But right before that road, I had to take 2 very close turns to get onto it. First, I'd take a right turn that was more than 90 degrees, almost back the way I came. Then, in exactly half a mile, I would turn left onto the long straight road, where I could really put the gas pedal down. Since it was only half a mile, I normally didn't speed up that much because the small stretch of road was more like packed gravel, and it would be a waste. I would have to slow down again to turn left onto the much better road where I could let loose. The tiny property on the inside corner of the left turn is where all this went down. A house had recently been built there, 2 stories, with a detached garage, and it seemed odd how quickly it had been erected, as we built our family house, and it took us a year to finish it. I will start at the beginning, because I believe this is all related. Week 1. I am positively jamming to my music. The wind whipping through my car feels great, and I'm relaxed in my very familiar drive home. I slow down to make my right turn onto the rough rural road, just bebopping along, and my lights illuminate something stunning. Sitting on the corner of the road is a wolf. A real wolf. A solid, white real wolf. I know the difference in my dog breeds and a wolf. I love watching dog competitions, wildlife documentaries, and have even met a 4th wolf in person. They look different from domestic dogs. This was a wolf, and it was amazing and blowing my mind. I slow down even more while I turn down my music. I'm getting close to it, and I notice it's not minding me at all. It is sitting perfectly still on the corner of the road, staring at the house, almost unblinking. Its ears didn't even flex towards me. All his attention was focused on this house. I was so close, I could have reached out my window and brushed the fur on the back of his head. I was smiling and amazed, but my mind was already churning. It made no sense for a wolf to be behaving like that, even less for there to be a white wolf in rural North Alabama in the summer. I came to a complete stop behind it, marveling at his fur and presence. I felt euphoric, like I had seen something rare and blessed. My mind made a jump to the local Indian stories of animal spirit guardians, and I started to wonder. I couldn't say though. My mom would never believe me if I told her I was late because of a spirit wolf. With a sigh, I said goodbye to the wolf and drove home in a better mood than ever. I got to see something special, and it filled me with emotions of joy and peace. Week 2, I was driving home again, and I'd been taking extra care to keep an eye out for my wolfy buddy, hoping to see him again around that area. So I drove extra slow, with my window down and radio off. That was a horrible mistake. I should have realized what the presence of a guardian meant. It meant danger. Alas, I was on the short road, approaching the new little house. And I saw the thing that to this very day makes me question my sanity, my reality, and possibly of eldritch terrors as Lovecraft described. It was crouched right before their mailbox, its limbs folded and pulled in tight, with his hunched posture, yet his head was still taller than the box. It was mottled green and black, with undertones of blue, and it looked wet and slimy all over. Its head was elongated, allowing for an extended maw full of razor-sharp teeth. The upper half of his body looked emaciated, with barely more than frog-like thin skin, pulled over angular long bones, ropey muscles to hold it upright. And at the end of its grossly stretched arms were equally terribly long fingers, while its legs had the bulk to them and looked equipped for running, with back-facing knees for sprinting and tipping in raptor-like curved claws. It looked tall, maybe 7 foot, maybe more,